Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Alright, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Subpart2. Joining me today is the one, the only, Steve Baxi.
Sup? I used to be Captain Steve also, so this is fitting.
Ah, Captain Steve. Okay, Captain Steve, who are we talking about then?
Today we are talking about Captain America, and when I say Captain America, I do mean specifically Steve Rogers, because if we do an episode on Bucky, it's an episode on Bucky.
Yeah, if we do an episode on Sam, it's an episode on Sam. Yeah. Captain America. So, elephant out of the room. Should Nick Spencer have made Captain America a Nazi?
No.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, I was just in the middle of this conversation in the comic shop the other day, because the guys were talking about, you know, Marvel relaunching all this stuff, and they're like, well, they just did the Secret Empire shit, and it was just garbage, and I could have been on board for the story. I'm like, yeah, you know, I was kind of on board in the wait-and-see mode with that, and then it just kept getting worse. Like, it did not deserve any of that faith, and so Captain America has been through some rough times recently, and so Mark White now is just trying to write a Captain America book that doesn't suck, and, you know, he's doing an okay job of that.
Yeah, the Mark Waid thing I had a really hard time getting excited about, because this is like his third run on Captain America now, and I just kind of don't care.
Yeah, it's weird when writers come back to stuff. But anyway, Captain America himself, outside of the awful... Like, to be fair, Secret Empire was hardly the first time some wacky shit was done to Captain America, though I feel like we're going to be talking about it in the same breath as Superman raped Big Barda and Lois Lane turned black for a day, and who else? What else is in that pantheon of dumb ideas that were apparently well-meaning?
Carol Danvers was raped by an alien.
Yeah, there's all
Donna Troy married a guy twice her age.
Yeah, there's all kinds of weird shit like that in comics. I know I'm forgetting one off the top of my head, but that's okay. Anyway, so yeah, Captain America, Steve Rogers himself. Now, you've been a Captain America fan for a long time. Was it the movies that made him one of your favorite characters, or was that already the case by the time the first movie came out?
No. So, okay, when I was a kid, it's when people ask me what got me into comics, I have a really hard time answering that question because I was never not into comics. My dad, before I was born, bought like a bunch of things that children enjoy and then just expected me to pick something. Like, he got sports stuff, video games, electronics, baseball shit, comic books, everything, and I just happened to like the comic books. And I read a whole bunch of old comics growing up, and then at one point I decided, okay, I'm going to go and buy actual contemporary comic book issues and follow along with a monthly series. And when I did, I got Captain America #1, and that one was actually Ed Brubaker's Captain America #1. So I became a Captain America fan simply by luck of the draw of walking into a comic book store and everyone telling me that, oh, if you're just getting into comics, you should buy Brubaker's Captain America #1. And so I did. And from there, I became a huge Captain America fan. Partly because those first 25 issues of Brubaker's Captain America are some of my favorite comics of all time. They're just fantastic.
Yeah, I never got into a big Captain America run until Nick Spencer, and it was unfortunate because I really liked a lot of that run. I think Nick Spencer had a lot of really interesting and good things to say. Right away at the beginning of his Sam Wilson book, he was paralleling the way Sam was treated with the way Obama was treated when he first became president. There was like, not my captain, and stuff like that, things mentioned, and that was really interesting. And then
Spencer writes Falcon Cap better than anyone else. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then I was just really disappointed as that book went on that it lost its way, because I was really digging it. And it's weird. It's a really weird feature of Captain America, because you and I are both very left-leaning, and that's the kind way of putting it. But so we, like, when you're a kid, at least with me, there's a perception of Captain America that is not at all the character I've realized as I've read and seen Captain America stuff. There's a perception that Captain America is literally propaganda. There's this perception that Captain America is very conservative, idealized character, and you imagine pictures of Captain America like shaking Ronald Reagan's hand when you're a kid and you don't know anything about the character. And then you read Captain America, and it is consistently some of the most left-wing stuff ever, and it's kind of hilarious, in my opinion.
I mean, Captain America, when Vietnam War was going on, Cap was like, no, fuck this. I don't want to wear American colors anymore, and decides to become Nomad. Like, Captain America's always been really interestingly at odds with his own identity, which I really, really liked.
Well, it is weird, because, like, Jack Kirby helped create him originally, even though, like, he wasn't credited originally, correct?
Yeah,
he helped create him originally, but he didn't get to do much of the writing on him at that point, even with the old school Marvel method in the original 40s comics. And then when he brought him back with Stan Lee, when they resurrected him, he got, you could tell that they got to do a lot more of their poisoning the youth with their political ideology stuff. And so Captain America started to become a real reflection of Jack Kirby's worldview, and Stan Lee's to some extent. And so you got a lot more left-leaning ideology thrown in there. And so Captain America's kind of always been, really far left. And it's kind of hilarious that people don't realize this about him. Because, like, when Spencer had Cap become a Nazi and had Sam Wilson protecting illegal immigrants, that issue, of course, because this always happens, those issues got picked up on, like, Fox News and talked about, like, oh, they're ruining these characters by throwing in their leftist agendas. I'm like, you don't know anything about this character. The perception that Captain America is a very conservative icon barely has any grounding. And even then, like, the 40s Captain America punching Hitler was really fucking left-wing political at that point.
The least left-wing Captain America can be characterized as, that you have grounds for in the comics, is liberal. Like, he is either left or liberal. He's never further right than liberal.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much that happens. And it's like, it's so funny that, and I see this all the time with a lot of other characters. I think there's some justification for it with Superman, to see Superman as a more conservative character, just because, like, Frank Miller has helped perpetuate that stereotype of him and stuff like that. So there's big name stuff that portrays him that way. Whereas Captain America, you gotta stretch to find anything. And even then, it's not really Captain America. It's someone who doesn't know what they're writing Captain America.
Yeah.
And so it's just... Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
It's just this really interesting, fun thing about the character that I feel the wider perception of him is so at odds with who he actually is.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. One of my favorite things about Captain America as far as discussion is that Marvel's got a sliding timeline of events, but because they depend so heavily on particular, like, checkpoints in their timeline, you open up all of these problems of, like, how much time can actually pass. And Captain America, I think, has some of the most interesting comics because of it. Because Captain America, he's in World War II, and then the comics drop off, and then they bring him back. But they bring him back in the 60s. And World War II ended in 1945.
Mm-hmm.
So from 1945 to the 60s, that's barely 20 years. So those original comics where Stan Lee and Jack Kirby bring back Captain America, everything's still there. Like, Sharon Carter's still alive. Nick Fury's still pretty young. The jarring switch Cap has nothing to do with technology. It's got nothing to do with his friends dying. It's entirely just, it's like he overslept and now everyone's further ahead than he was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, really fascinating. But the thing I like even more than that is just if you move the timeline up even a little bit more into the 60s when you get into Vietnam, there's a fantastic issue by Steve Englehart, who wrote in his first Captain America issue. I think it's his first Captain America issue. He has to pick up this loose plot thread of Captain America and Nick Fury being at odds and Cap not knowing why. And he resolves that plot thread in the first issue with Nick Fury breaking into Cap's house drunk and having a heart-to-heart with him, saying that, like, we fought together in World War II when we were both heroes, but then you went away, and I had to be the one to go through the Cold War and slowly become a criminal, and you get to come back and be the golden boy still. And it's just so fascinating to think of Cap and Nick Fury having that dynamic at one point.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And you know, like, it begs the question of if we could actually let comic books play out naturally as opposed to have to keep establishing status quo as what people are familiar with. It begs the question, what if we did just let Cap age properly? Like, because it is that sliding timeline. He's never been out of the ice for more than, like, 10 to 15 years, right? So, like, what if we did bring Cap back and we let him just keep aging, and he did at some point start to make those compromises that the rest of the world did? Like, would that happen, or would that be writing Captain America out of character? We don't know, because our image of Captain America is always really, like, frozen in time. Haha.
Going from Brubaker to what's his name? Rick Remender. House of M is a really bad event, but House of M had some really interesting tie-ins because it just created, like, these fun alternate realities. And House of M Captain America, the Brubaker issue, was What If Cap Didn't Get Frozen? And it's just 22 pages of Cap living his life from World War II all the way through being an old man getting a medal during, like, the early 2000s. And it's a really fascinating look at, like, this, because Brubaker wrote Captain America as, like, a really gruff war veteran type character that's super serious and almost like a mercenary in certain respects, and also kind of an asshole in certain respects. And, like, having that person actually get softened by how terrible the world had been in that entire century is really interesting. But then the other one is when Rick Remender was writing Captain America, and he was writing him in Uncanny Avengers, he opened this door of, Cap's a good person, but when he was around in the 1940s, there were no such thing as mutants, and here are all of these X-Men, and Cap is kind of racist.
One of my favorite little joke panels, and, like, I love little comics on the internet that can make jokes like this, is Captain America meeting Black Panther, and he goes, no, I just think he should have his own Avengers team. And his own bathroom. It's just like, oh shit. Because that would be the reality, right? If we unfroze some white guy from the 40s, I don't care how left-leaning you are, any random white guy is probably going to have some of those hang-ups. Like even if he doesn't, like, actually think of black people as, like, lesser than, he's probably still going to use the word Negro. And that's going to be weird.
Yeah, no, that's the really interesting thing about Captain America is that we always want to, like, shy away from Cap probably being kind of a jerk, and Brubaker never really did that, which is why I appreciated it. Like, Brubaker's Captain America was kind of your stereotypical hyper-masculated man that had a hard time talking about his feelings, and because of that was really hard to be around because they wouldn't help themselves. And it's really fun to see Brubaker take that character and soften him up throughout that. by making him deal with his racism, by making him deal with his war crimes, by making him deal with all the people that he killed unjustifiably, and how he does that through Bucky also. Cap as a character is just really fascinating because he is a good person for his time, and everyone idealizes him for being a good person for his time. And then he has to constantly live up to a version of himself that he recognizes was a bad person.
That's really interesting. And I feel like because
I know a lot of people that say they don't care about Captain America except in the Avengers context, and I always just tell them, but like, there's so much about Captain America that's really interesting that no other superhero has. You just kind of have to frame it right.
That's true, but would you agree that the Marvel movies have gone with the Captain America who was always a morally upstanding person?
They have, and I think they work really, really well in that context. Chris Evans as Captain America and everything they've been doing with that character is just genuinely fantastic.
Dude, Chris Evans just is Captain America.
He really is. Like, he is Captain America in a way Downey is nowhere near Iron Man.
Right?
Me, at least.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't really want anyone to actually be Tony Stark. Let's be honest here.
No, that's true. I just mean in the sense like people saying that Robert Downey Jr. was born to play Iron Man. No. Chris Evans was born to play Captain America. Christopher Reeve was born to play Superman. Like, it's that kind of comparison.
No, that's fair. I just mean, like, in his daily life, Chris Evans has become Captain America for me, and he's just such a nice person, but at the same time, like, he has the balls that Captain America needs, you know? Like, I love listening to the shit Chris Evans says to Donald Trump on Twitter. I love the fact that he is actually taking him on and stuff. Like, just because so many people are afraid to say shit that are in the public eye. And it's so damn refreshing to see Captain America not shying away from that. Like, god damn, I really want Chris Evans to punch Donald Trump in the face. Like, we could probably get a Kickstarter going to get him out of prison if that happened, right?
Oh man, it would be fantastic. I want it so bad.
Like, there've been all the images of, like, Wonder Woman punching Trump and Superman punching Trump and Batman punching Trump. I'm sure someone's done Captain America punching Trump. Can someone please just do Chris Evans punching Trump? Like, he can be wearing the suit and all, but no mask, please. Because, damn, I need that in my life.
In a world as dark as this, it is nice to know that Chris Evans can be Captain America even when he's not filming.
Right. Then there's just other stuff about Captain America besides the morals and the politics that's just kind of cool. That shield, it makes no sense, but it's awesome.
The physics of that shield don't bother me as much as the idea that anyone who touches it as it's coming back should have their fingers sliced off.
Yeah, fair point. No, I just like that, and you know, it's cool and it's wacky, silly, comic booky. But then there's also something just inherently interesting about the fact that Captain America's weapon is defensive in nature.
Well, Captain America's weapon is defensive, and that he's sitting there as like a symbol for American values, at the same time not embodying any of them, particularly because he doesn't have a gun. He's just got a shield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. He's like, this is what you could be if you actually did what you said instead.
Yeah. Yeah, the shield is one of the coolest comic book weapons. I will say, though, there was a whole thing when Winter Soldier came out of movie audiences saying that, oh, Winter Soldier is the movie that made us realize Captain America's shield is actually a really cool weapon. And people say that partly because they used it in that movie the way it's used in the comics. And because I've been reading them for years by the time that movie came out, I didn't think the use of the shield in that movie was special at all. I thought it was kind of generic. And for me, Age of Ultron is the much cooler use of the shield, because in that one,
he's got the magnetic thing.
Uses it as a chokehold to decapitate robots and like tosses it between his teammates and shit, which is not something you see in the comics at all.
Yeah, that was cool. I like the electromagnet retrieval thing on the shield. It
Me
makes
too.
no sense that he would not be like pulling the cars and shit to him as well, but it's cool as fuck.
That shield has like the worst like laws of any science ever. It's terrible.
I know, like vibranium's not supposed to be magnetic, if I'm remembering my Wakandan history correctly. But fuck it, I love it. What are some good Captain America comics you'd recommend for people?
So Brubaker's run is fantastic. Rick Remender's run is great until you get to Falcon Cap. Partly because at that point Rick Remender's heart just isn't in doing these types of comics. He doesn't write Falcon Cap very well.
Mm-hmm.
He does have a story with Nuke that is fucking amazing, though. So Brubaker and Remender are really good. And then Steve Englehart's run is fantastic because that's the one where he gets disenfranchised with America and decides to become nomad and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Mark Gruenwald stuff from the 70s and 80s, which is a really, really long run. So it's really good and really bad. That's the infamous Captain America becomes a werewolf story, which is really stupid. But it's also Captain America versus the Captain, and it's like more of the iconic, oh, here's the Serpent Society, and here's Jack Kirby's Mad Bomber coming back, and it's Mark Gruenwald's Captain America run was the iconic Captain America run before Brubaker came on.
Okay, that's cool. I really, really like the it's Mark Waid, Man Out of Time, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I love that thing. Because, like, so often the problem with Marvel, and we've talked about this a number of times, like, hey, Steve, I want to get into Spider-Man. What should I read? Well, go back and read the original original Steve Ditko's Stan Lee run, and then go read this run, and then go read this. Go read these 600 issues of comics for the last 60 years.
Yeah, in chronological order, preferably.
Yeah. Whereas, like, so it's so hard to just give someone, okay, you want to understand this character, here's a book you can read from Marvel. But Man Out of Time is, like, one of the best Captain America stories because it has him do a thing that, like, that I really love when comics do this, where they take a thing that a character's hung up over and then they just throw it out the window. So, like, you know, one thing that we often see with Captain America is he's, like, really nostalgic and he misses his past and everything, and, like, you get the sense that you want to go back. Man Out of Time puts him back, and he realizes he was too nostalgic, that he wasn't aware enough of the social problems, and that there's more good to be done in the future than there was to be done in his time. And I really, really like that. And then it's just got a bunch of other really cool shit in it. It's just a really good standalone Marvel comic that is worth your time reading. It's also got really wildly different perspectives on history that I like. So I really, really enjoy that one. And then, of course, the movies are very good as well. Movies are what made me a fan of Captain America, I'm not ashamed to admit. Before, like, I'd make jokes about Captain America. I didn't really care for him one way or the other, but man, Chris Evans just kills that role and makes you love the character more.
There's just Cap's moments in all the Marvel movies tend to be some of the most strongly written moments in any of them. Like Winter Soldier, I love Captain America Civil War. I think Captain America Civil War is one of the best comic book films of all time. But, like, Winter Soldier is one of those movies that, like, on a structural level is just beat for beat one of the most flawless comic book films of all time. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's really hard to find a problem with that movie, and there are problems, but, like, for what it is in its universe and what the story's trying to tell, it's just so airtight. And it's crazy that it was directed by some comedy directors, too, right? Yeah. Like, goddamn, those guys came out of nowhere with that. Never listen to comic book fans about production picks. They're always wrong. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, so I really I've got a respect for Captain America that I didn't used to have, and I think it's like Superman, you know, like this always happens with characters. Like, you don't like Superman when you're younger, and then suddenly you realize, oh no, Superman's cool. And that's not universal, but I know a lot of people have gone through that. I think that's the same thing with Captain America. He's just got a coolness to him once you really start to understand the character. And he's one of those characters I think has a... Would you agree he's got a pretty strong narrative of like who he is? It's a really strong identity. He doesn't change a lot in the comics. I think so, yeah. I mean, I think the earlier stuff, partly because of the time jump isn't as severe. He's a little bit of a different character. Like it's the whole man out of time thing doesn't come up until it's been at least 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just because a lot hasn't changed in that time period. But yeah, the moment you get to about the 40-year mark, Captain America is pretty much the same as he's always been, and we just kind of add more and more social context layers to him.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting because everyone else keeps advancing. Like Captain America has to be in World War II. What's going to happen in once we're in the 2040s when it's been 100 years? I wonder what those stories are going to be like.
Futurama him if you have to. If he's not in World War II, he's not Captain America.
I know, really. Like, it's just going to be... The changes to the context in which he's dealing with are going to be so interesting. Particularly because we've moved beyond, the people that were there and had the values of the day critiquing the modern day world. It's going to be this window. It is at this point, but there's still one step removed kind of people writing the character. But it's going to be at a certain point. People who have no idea no connection to what it was actually like in those times saying things were better. And that's going to be weird.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see Captain America, recovering from Secret Empire. If we can do anything with him that doesn't rely too heavily on that sort of nostalgia narrative, because that's what Mark Waid's been doing right now, and I don't hate it, but it's really easy,
I think it needs to be. I think you just, after Secret Empire, you just need solid, fun Captain America stories right now.
Sure.
He doesn't need a run right now. He needs a breather.
Oh, no, which is totally fine for me right now in this moment. I just mean the general sense of, given everything with Donald Trump and the way America's acting right now, the whole idea of collapsing into the narrative of at what point was America great is really, really easy going forward, and I don't want that.
It's true. It's true.
Because that's the thing with Donald Trump, the whole idea of make America great again. People on a liberal spectrum say something like America is always great or some bullshit like that, and then next thing you know, 10 years later, you're writing a Captain America story about remember when America was great.
Yeah.
No, that's not Captain America. Don't do that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we did recommendations already. I kind of just threw that in randomly, but it seemed appropriate at the time. I need a couple more minutes.
Costume?
Oh, favorite costume? The stealth suit from Winter Soldier. It's sex. It is sex, man.
That costume, I can't believe how much of a life that costume has taken on. Because now everyone knows it as the Winter Soldier stealth suit. But when I saw those production stills, I'm like, oh, that's the costume he had from Steve Rogers' Super Soldier when he was America's top cop.
Oh, really?
And, no one fucking remembers that anymore. No one remembers that fucking weird 4 or 5 issue period of time where he just wore that suit and was a weird intergalactic police officer.
Comic books are weird, man.
They're really weird.
Do you think it's they picked this design from the comics, or do you think it's one of those weird things where 2 people came up with the exact same design?
Oh, no. That is definitely that suit. Because before that movie came out, that suit actually had T-shirts and everything. And it was really popular, and that's why they used it for the movie. But the movie version is distinct and popular enough that it doesn't even matter now that it was based on a comic.
That's amazing. Okay. What about you?
I mean, Bucky Cap's costume is always going to be my favorite Captain
Oh, if
America
we're gonna throw in other stuff, I loved the design for Spencer's Sam Cap run.
Oh, that's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, it is so in your face. It looks like a fucking like a drag queen outfit. God damn it, I love it. It's just so blatant and flamboyant, and it's perfect.
Bucky Cap and Falcon Cap really have really good costumes. But my other favorite Steve Rogers costume is the one from Rick Remender's run, where it's kind of like an amalgam between the regular chainmail costume and the Ultimates costume.
Uh-huh.
That one's really cool and really sleek. I love it when Captain Captain America has chainmail. I think that's just hokey enough to look cool.
I don't get it, but whatever. I don't get it.
Yeah,
The scale
fair.
armor makes no like world like the I really like the Steve Rogers World War II outfit from the first movie, but chainmail just makes no fucking sense ever.
I mean, that's fair.
Under any context does Captain America wearing scale armor make any sense? But whatever. Okay. Well, I said I'd come up with a character to talk about next week, and I didn't want to do big, like, like everyone's like, oh, why aren't you talking about this character yet? Why are you talking about all these small characters? I don't know, like, how much are we going to say about this huge character that's been around for decades that we've not already, that a million other people haven't already said? But you know what? Fuck it, we're going to go for it. Next week we're talking about Wonder Woman.
Woo!
Wonder Woman! Alright. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the Exile.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.